Hi everyone, beautiful beings of light. Welcome to my channel today. It's Tiffany here. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. In today's video, I am inviting a beautiful priestess, a guest onto my channel today. And she's Dawn. And Dawn has been a very impressive spiritual healer, leader in the conscious healing community. And we have together an event coming up. She's invited me as one of the speakers as part of her Return of the Priestess 2 speaker series. And I think that was such a beautiful event, and I said yes to taking part in it. And so I invited Dawn today to tell us more about the priestess energy, more about the divine feminine, and also if you're interested in learning more about the priestess energy, what you can expect in the event itself. So for myself, I'll be doing starseed DNA activation and also some light language as well, as Dawn would ask me some questions about it. There are so many other speakers and beautiful, beautiful priestesses and women as part of the event as well. So very exciting. And thank you, Dawn, for being here today. And I wanted to just take a moment to welcome you. And if you can
Thank
just
you.
introduce yourself a little bit to us, because many of us might not know who you are.
Okay. Thank you, Tiffany. It's a pleasure to be here and really an honor and a delight. So my name's Dawn DelVecchio, and I've been a priestess for more than 36 years. In fact, today, as we record this, my son is 37 years old, and it was his home birth all those years ago that initiated me into the divine feminine with a group of other women who all had home births together. So that's a bit of a long story, but suffice it to say that my journey has taken me in many directions over those years. And several years ago, Divine Mother really guided me through signs, nudges, 2x4s over the head to redirect my efforts as an entrepreneur back into a space where I could be more in a spiritual leadership position rather than business coaching, copywriting, and the space I had been operating in at that time. And so I feel really grateful that at this time on the planet, I get to really be already kind of aligned with my divine mission, if you will, or my soul's divine intent. And I get to work with women from around the world, and it's an extraordinary thing in an extraordinary period of time that the field I was playing in with the divine feminine back in my early 20s, which was very much on the margin of society and very much whispered word of mouth, like, are you going to the goddess ritual, is now very much central in certain spaces that we move. So I hope that answers a little bit. I mean, there's lots of background, right? I've been around the planet for a bunch of years, so.
Yes, yeah, and it seems like we all tend to take the same path as we go from a very corporate, masculine-based energy more and more. And I'm seeing every day more women and men are leaving the corporate space and going into more of a soul-aligned path. And so we're curious to learn, like, how did you find yourself transitioning into the priestess path yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, this is great. And it's true. It is the time when people are moving away from those unloving systems, whether it's corporate or just the systems of mind. Like, I was always an entrepreneur, but I was still operating with that very masculine drive. So what happened was, well, first of all, I had been initiated as a priestess in 1986. So that has always been with me. I've been a tarot reader, an astrologer. I didn't really have so much of my psychic skills online, my intuitive skills, but those came after a lot of emotional, spiritual clearing and psycho-spiritual clearing. But what happened was I started getting strong indicators back as far as 2013 that I was very off course with my energy. I was driving really hard to build a little mini empire, being coached by very masculine women who were all about making these $1 million coaching businesses and creating these hierarchical structures. And I was a professional copywriter, so a lot of deadlines, a lot of just that real left brain, like at the desk every day, working. And I had I had a menstrual period that lasted for 6 months and I almost bled to death. So
Wow.
that was the first like really serious red flag that was like and you know what? There was never anything wrong with me. I took tests. I went to a naturopath. We basically had to stop the bleeding through an herbal styptic, and there was nothing ever physically wrong with me. It was bizarre. So I still wasn't quite getting the message. But in 2016, the ship started to finally turn. I began to do workshops at my house and ceremonies and kind of getting back to it. And then in 2018, I had the opportunity to present at an event in Bali called the Awakened Woman Conference. And that was an activator for so many of us as presenters and attendees. And that was really where I discovered that there were women who were actually leading other women as priestesses. And there were some women who were fumbling around calling themselves priestesses, but I could see they had never done any shadow work. They had never done any self-inquiry. They had never done any of that. And I really got a strong message from Divine Mother. This is your path. You are to be a priestess leader. And I was like, really? Could it be that good? I didn't really know that was possible to do that. So from there, I kept, the ceremonies that I was doing, I kind of amped it up and I visioned into a retreat, which I ultimately brought forward, and then another one and another one. And then I got, I literally woke up one morning and I heard Return of the Priestess. And because I'd been in internet marketing and entrepreneurship for so long, I, of course, bought the URL right away, because as one does, right? And then I sat with it for a while and I kind of knew what it was. I kind of knew it was going to be a summit, a speaker series, but I also knew the amount of work that it was going to be, and that it would mean that I would have to really come out of the broom closet of hiding and step up as a leader. So I had more work to do. I actually, there was inner work that was done. And then there were, I could say, signs and magical helpers to come in to support me in preparing for that. And so last year, right when the lockdown started, was when we rolled out the Return of the Priestess 1, and it became this global feminine activation. It changed the face of my business, my work, my day-to-day life, because I'm so much more in service in the frequency of holding the feminine frequency that comes through in that for supporting other women on their spiritual path. And hopefully that answers your question. There's so much more than that, but hopefully that kind of shows you the thread, how it went.
Yes, yes. And I think this is so important because a lot of women, when they're just starting out, they're like, well, how do we get to her level? And they start to
Yeah.
compare, but we all started from ground zero and
Yes.
we all have very similar path. We started out with our own healing, our shadow work, and starting small groups and then growing larger and larger from there. So it's beautiful that you're sharing your own journey so that other women can feel like this is possible for them, because there is a priestess in all of us. It's not
Yes.
something that people think is, oh, so out there in Lemuria and other places that we have visited in Akash. Was quite common, actually. It's a common path that many of us took. So now with the ascension energy returning, this divine feminine energy balancing, returning, I think it's very beautiful that we as women are able to reattune, like you said, to the womb, to the source, channeling abilities. And I think a lot of it too is, we might have noticed a lot of women when they first starting out, they blockages, right, surrounding
Mm-hmm.
embracing their gifts. So what would you advice or anything, tips that you've gone through that you would love to share with those of us that may be struggling? Oh, am I making this up? Am I imagining thing? Can I really do this? What would you say to them?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's an issue. I even have a name for, at least for some of us. I call it BATS syndrome, burned at the stake syndrome. Women. We have to remember that women, and even if we've lived many incarnations as male, female, other non-human, it doesn't matter. Right now, we are holding this feminine line, and if we go back through the feminine line in the wombs of our mothers and grandmothers, etc., we carry a lot of trauma. And whether that's, your lineage, Chinese foot binding, my lineage, witch burnings, many African women's clitoridectomies, we have extensive trauma that's held through the lineage, the genetic lines of the danger of stepping up, showing up, shining our light. And even when we know it intellectually, that doesn't necessarily mean we can just go, all right, well, then I'm going to just ignore that and step up. This isn't everybody's case, but it is for many of us. So doing our healing work, shadow work, and really turning off the external noise. There has to be a lot of work around what the ego is getting off on. Is the ego getting off on chasing after the next shiny object, trying to become the famous fill in the blank? It's not about that. It's about sacred service. And when you move from that place because you've done enough of your own inner healing and you've connected with other high frequency priestesses or feminine leaders who are operating from service, and you do that healing work, whatever that is, whether it's lineage healing, whether it's entity removal because you've got something attached to you that's holding you back, whatever it is for you, and that's your journey, right? Each of us has our journey. And you come to that place of like, I know that my soul is here to be in service during this great awakening. Guide me, Mother, show me the way. And then you follow the signs. You can start to slowly step into it. So that's the side, kind of what we would call the psycho-spiritual. Now, the other side of it is not everyone's spiritual mission path, priestess service looks like a business. Not everyone came to have a big presence. I mean, there are some priestesses who have really big presences. Mine is just, it is what it is, and I'm fine with that. It's got to be about the service and the recognition of, are you in joy? Are you loving what you're doing? Is it supporting you? If you're in alignment, it will support you. If you drive from that place of like wanting to have the big, giant platform, superstar and fame, that's that old paradigm that's collapsing right now. If we try and play in that arena, it's not going to work. Now, at the same time, if there are those who, for some, because we do need leaders and you do need to show up so that others can find you, those who you're here to either lead or do healing work with. So if you're called in that way to build it as a business, you do have to also do those practical steps. It's not enough to say, I'm just going to serve everybody and la, 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 and they're going to come to me. For some people, that does happen. For most of us, though, we have to have some boots on the ground practical skills. So but it comes first to the healing, then to the guidance for, how am I here to serve? And then if that looks like some kind of business or where you have to have a more public presence in order to do that, then you have to have that practical element as well, whether that's building a YouTube channel or in my case, really knowing all the infrastructure in the back end to be able to roll out something like a speaker summit, whether it's learning how to build a healing practice and getting the right help, whatever it is, there's that practical, we are still in the 3D. There is that still practical, component of the physical.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's so important is that light and shadow, practical spirituality has to come into one. And yes, to me, being a priestess is a state of being and it's unique to each of us. So that reminded me as you're sharing, I have some female friends that are like very private about everything that they do. They think it's so sacred that the moment they share to the world, then it's not sacred anymore. And then there is like, groups like perhaps like ourselves where we don't mind sharing. We think sharing is great and to us is sacred. So there's so many different unique aspects of embodying that priestess energy.
Yes.
And that's why I really liked your event, because your value reflect that. You invited so many different priestesses from different culture, lineages, age groups with all types of experiences and expertise. And so that's really beautiful. And I think that that's something that's so important, because sometimes people say, you're doing the priestess thing wrong, or no, you can only worship one god as a priestess. So there's even some infighting going on in the community. I think that being more open and allowing and just honoring each other's expertise and skills is so important. And so I want to take a moment to just acknowledge your event for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was important to me to have diversity. And if you think about the ancient times, imagine us long, long ago in Lemuria, maybe, or even Atlantis, or other cultures where we had temples and we served as priestesses. And there were probably some who were scribes or scholars or researchers, and others who were warrior priestesses who defended and protected, and midwives and psychics and channels and oracles and gardeners and herbalists. And I mean, all of those possibilities, right? Well, same true now. And in terms of any kind of infighting, that's all ego. That's all ego. I have no knowledge of your unique path or of your soul's intent. So it's none of my business how you do it. Now, when someone begins abusing power, and like we've seen many gurus abuse power and, create cults and stuff like that, there's definitely reason for concern to say, whoa, boy, that looks like that guru's going to have a lot of karma to work through, right? But even those followers who fall into that have their own soul lessons to learn about personal authority and sovereignty and all of that. So it's really indulging in the ego's playground to be fussing about what other priestesses are doing or other people who, all of that. It is time for us to really align with divinity and stop worrying about the horizontal plane and say, let me be the clear channel vessel for divine light to come through, that I may uplift those whose lives I touch and emanate that frequency for the entire planet, because that is what we need right now.
Exactly, a very good point, Don. And it's so beautiful, like you say, there are different priestesses that do different jobs. Because even in Akashic reading, people always expect, oh, if I'm a priestess, I'm going to do rituals all the time. And it's not true.
Yes.
Sometimes they write scribbing or oracle seers and medicine. And there's so many different types. And that's the beauty of being in this incarnation, because you can draw upon all those skills. And I think there, like you mentioned before, burn at the stake. A lot of times I find that when sometimes women get together, the past life triggers can get activated and they might feel unsafe around women. And so I think it's so important for us to have events like this, have safe space like this for women to come together and to heal those wounds that, like you said, those trauma, like bullying or, stepping on each other to climb the ladder, can be healed. Because when women are in their power and even helping each other heal, that's where I see those magical transformations happen. So do you have also any stories on your end from last year's event that would be very inspiring to share with us?
Oh gosh, let's see. I mean, well, in terms of last year's event or this type of event, because it's a virtual gathering, none of the priestesses really get to meet each other, although this year we have some live events. And I did want to point out that you're going to be also, in addition to our interview, right, we're going to be co-creating something together. So let me just tune in. Well, again, we had diversity. We had 6 continents represented. We had different priestess lineages. And what I found, however, was that, interestingly, getting feedback from the women who spoke, because everybody gets to offer a free gift. Some people offer a paid offering as well. Those who had the most women come and be attracted to them were those priestesses who had done the most shadow work and were very mature and in deep devotion to Divine Mother. And they didn't necessarily have the biggest, we could say, priestess brand. So that was interesting. And it really spoke to, our own, I would say, as a collective, humans who are on the spiritual seeker path, our own increasing intuition and inner guidance, and that so many women turn to. There were a handful of priestesses who are, again, deeply devoted, mature, older than me, and they were blown away by how many leads they got, how many people came into their community. So I think it speaks to the awakening consciousness of humanity overall, or certainly women. The other thing I would share is that it was life-changing for women, and literally, I would get on calls with women, one-on-one with women who would come into tears with gratitude for Return of the Priestess coming into their lives right at the time where they most needed it, because they were in despair, they were afraid over what was happening. And there was even one woman, a European woman, she was at the end of her tether and ready to exit the planet, ready to commit suicide. So, and this is not, I want to say that I was guided to do this. It is mine to do. It was mine to do. Each of us has our own thing to do. This was mine to do. I could not have done it alone. There were 30 of us all together last year. There'll be 28 this year. But so it is on some kind of soul agreement, co-collective thing that we brought it together and sent it out across the earth. And it has activated so many women. And again, it will do again this year. I have no doubt, because the caliber of speakers this year is, if it's even possible, even more extraordinary. So it is the times we are in that it takes so many of us to just step into what it is we're called to do, to contribute to the greater movement of awakening of humanity.
That's so beautiful. Yes, I love that unity and coming together and helping each other grow and expand. And it's also, I think, it's the Divine Mother in general. We just we love to be nourished. And a lot of times I find a lot of women, especially priestesses, they tend to give a lot, right? They are very good at taking care of others, but not as much themselves. And I can speak on that. We struggle with that. And I think it's so good to create a space as a reminder that, hey, you can receive and you can also feel safe to be in this environment, to nourish yourself. And I think even just I'm thinking about like the corporate structure, like when you're on your moon time or things like that. It's really not the best for women because you're forced to go to work. And I know so many women have womb issues because of this disharmony between the cycle of your flow and just this 9 to 5 go hustle, and yes, very kind of masculine based type of work schedule. So
Yes.
I'm sure you have seen that during your own work and in the event
Yeah.
as well. So how do you think women that are working in the corporate now, that work in that type of structure, what are some tips you would give them to start attuning back to their flow, their cyclical moon flow, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. This is a wonderful question. And first, well, I mean, it's a choice, right? I realize that we still have to go to work. And I, just so you know, I was a martial artist for years. So I had to train and compete sometimes, whether I had my flow or not. And my legs were a lot weaker when I had my flow, that's for sure. It was very noticeable. So I really feel for women, especially those who have heavy cramping, which I did not have, but my mom did when I was growing up. So it's a choice. It really is a choice. What can you do to create sanctuary in your life, to create that space, that altar to Divine Mother? What can you do to offer some of your blood to a tree, or squat on the weekend and bleed under a tree, or take the blood? I used to use my son's old cloth diapers and wring them out in water and use that water to nurture a plant, or put it in a vessel on the altar during your moon time, or put it under the moon. There has to be a re-honoring of that. Even if you're putting your business suit on and going into corporate and, have to plug it up with a tampon, still you have the other part of your day. You could chant to your womb. You could lay in the tub and massage your womb. There's so many ways of honoring, and not all of them have to take a long time, but it is a choice and it is a commitment. It's a dedication to reawaken your inner feminine and honor her, because she wants to be honored and she needs to be honored. We are in the time of the return of the Great Mother to rebalance what has been so lopsided.
And absolutely, thanks for sharing those tips. And yes, doesn't have to take long. It can be very simple. And at first, I think that because of how disconnected we are with the feminine, we might find some of these practices strange or kind of shameful at times. And those are the time we want to do our shadow work and really look into, why do I feel shameful about my body and its so natural flow, and
Yes.
working on those aspects. So if any of you that are listening and feel like, oh, I don't want to do that, we invite you to come into the space or do a little bit more research and get into the sacred feminine space. Because when you're in a space where it seems so normal to all of us, then it's not such a taboo anymore. It's in fact, our ancestors have been doing it for a very, very long time. So it's beautiful to reclaim these practices into our daily lives, and many cultures have all talked about these practices. So thank you, Dawn, for sharing your view as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as a closing statement, we invite you to join us in the Return of the Priestess 2. And Dawn, can you let us know, how do people sign up? Do they go to a link or?
Yeah, there's a registration. It's returnofthepriestess.com. And I think it's going to be / let me just see here if I have it.
I'll
I don't have
post
it
it
up right
below
now.
the
But
video.
anyway, you'll post it below. I don't know, because we're just, as we record this, we're in the finishing touches of that page. But what happens is it's free. First of all, it's free. This is a totally free event. It runs for 2 weeks. There are 3 live ceremonies, 28 speakers. Each interview is about 40 to 50 minutes. And so you can register for free, watch the series. There'll be an encore weekend. Or 3 days on the week. And, if you don't want to get emails after that, you can unsubscribe, but you can have access. And there will be an option to pay to buy the series as well, with 50% going to a vetted charitable cause that you'll learn more about, again, when you click on the link. So yeah, we'd love to have you. Absolutely. And of course, men can watch this too. Men who identify or have women they love and want to understand some of these energies, you're more than welcome as well.
Absolutely, and it goes beyond gender as well. So it's all learning about
Yes.
this yin, divine mother energy. So I will post a link below, and it's free, guys. This is amazing. So you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by joining us. So we extend this special invitation to you. And once again, we thank Dawn for taking her time to come speak with us today and have this beautiful conversation together. So thank you so much.
Thank
And to
you.
all of the viewers here, thanks for joining us in this past half hour. We send you much love and much light, and have a wonderful day ahead. Bye.